Okay, great. I hope you guys can hear me back there and kind of see the font when I do the demo. So in case it's not visible, just let me know. I can increase the font when I get to the terminal screen. So again, thank you for stopping by. My name is Madhukar, and I'm a technical product manager with the NSX business unit. My focus is mainly on automation and orchestration, and the session today, like the 25-minute session, is more about installing NSX through Ansible. And as a bonus, I'll also be showing configuring NSX, excuse me, like a day 2 configuration, creating T1s, tier 0s, segments, firewall rules, adding tags, all of that through Ansible as well. So there is a live demo, and obviously the install will take a little bit more time. So it's a pre-recorded demo, but the config is going to be a live demo. First, I'll walk through the Ansible code, kind of show what I'm doing, and then we'll just go from that. If you have questions, just feel free to let me know. It's fairly straightforward. Get started, obviously, this is about NSX. Who here doesn't or has not heard about NSX or has not played with NSXT before? Okay, good. So that way I can kind of go quickly over the NSX aspects of it. In terms of Ansible, introduction to Ansible, it's obviously a framework. Who here is new to Ansible? Okay, couple of folks, that's fine. So Ansible is a framework. It uses Python in the backend. It's libraries, modules that you can write. It can interact with a systems API. I'm not talking specifically with NSX in this slide, it's general. Obviously, it's not a deep dive on Ansible itself. Ansible has been around since quite some time, popular because of its ability to talk to remote systems, configure it. It's an agentless system, so you don't have to install anything on your client system. As long as you have SSH connectivity, you're generally good to go. In this case, with NSXT, we have NSXT modules. It uses the NSXT APIs, the policy APIs that we have, and obviously it'll be interacting with the NSX manager. So you just need the HTTPS access, IP connectivity, FQDN, IP, you're good to go, and you can use the Ansible modules. To run the module, you just need a Linux, Windows, whatever machine that you're comfortable with, and get the code from GitHub, and then you're all set. Again, for kind of a quick introduction to the Ansible platform itself, this is what generally you would see when you look at an Ansible Playbook. It has an inventory file. In our case, the inventory is very limited because it just runs everything on the local host, because it's doing the API connectivity to the NSX manager from the local system itself, wherever you're running the Ansible Playbook. It obviously uses different tasks. You can combine them into playbooks, just as an example here. In most of my code, I use variables. I include the variables file in the top there. It makes my life easier. It's easy to just save my variables file because the playbook itself, it's not that valuable. It's just a playbook, a task, and the members in it. The variables files is what actually I save, depending upon what data center I'm talking to, what system I'm talking to, whether it's my POC, whether it's my lab environment. I just change the variables, but the playbooks can remain the same. In terms of NSXT installation, like prerequisites and what you need before you actually start, obviously, you need an environment where you want to install NSX. I'm talking about the right-hand side of the slide. You need physical ESX servers, vCenters if you're deploying everything on a VMware environment. You need IP connectivity. And to run Ansible, obviously, you need Python, Ansible itself, and to install the first NSX node, you need OVF tool. This is the VMware's OVF executable. Just install it, provide the path in the variables file, and that's all you need. In terms of the actual workflow of installing NSX, the examples on GitHub, I'll go through them again, is split based on the steps that you would normally do, which is the first thing is you install the first NSX node. This would be an OVF tool command. It talks to vCenter, installs the OVF. Once it's up and running, it'll actually check the status. If all the subsystems are up, it'll then go and configure a compute manager. At this time, you're not yet created an NSX cluster. If you want to skip this part of configuring it with vCenter, you could still do it, but forming the cluster would then be a NSX CLI command, which we don't have an Ansible module for yet. Typically, most customers have not asked for it. Like, most people are okay. Almost everyone that I've asked this question to are okay to register vCenter and then form the cluster using the NSX API. Once this is done, install more NSX nodes. At this point, even though I'm still doing everything through Ansible, I'm using the NSX API in the backend, not OVF tool anymore. So it'll deploy the next couple of NSX nodes, form the cluster for you, and then you can go ahead and start configuring your host transport nodes. You could jump ahead and create your edges first. Doesn't really matter. This is just my steps. You don't have to do it this way. Once you have the NSX cluster available, after that point, you create the edge first, you create the host transport zones, transport nodes first, sorry. It doesn't really matter. Edges, edge cluster, and the transport zone. Once you do all of this, this is where you kind of have your NSX ready for consumption. You should be able to log into the UI. Obviously, you can also do it once the NSX node is done, but this is the point where you can kind of go into the UI, validate everything, if everything is come up, if all the tunnels are up, and start creating and configuring your NSX. Now, as I said, the code is already on GitHub. It's available today. If you notice the URL, it's a VMware GitHub URL. It's not my personal one, which means it's officially supported. So if you want to use Ansible to install, go ahead and use this. If you have any questions, trouble, feel free to call support. They'll be able to help you out. You are also encouraged to look at the issues. You can also file issues. You can file feature requests. The engineering team constantly monitors that and then responds fairly quickly. All of the development or bug fixes happen in the dev branch once it's been thoroughly tested. And we try to align it to an NSX release. Once that happens, you will see a new branch that you can start using, which will then be formally supported. So the top of tree, the master or the dev branch, you're free to play with it, look at the code, modify it, fork it, whatever you want to do. Just remember that if you want to call support, you have to be on the right branch. That's it. I split the example for creation of the NSX setup into two phases. One is specifically creating the NSX cluster. The other one was creating the rest of the transport nodes and transport zones. As you can see, what I've done is created the playbooks individually so that if you want to do it, you can just use the specific playbooks. There is also a common variables file, which has all the variables that you would ever need. So let me show you. Hold on. All right. So this is the Ansible Git repository. If you go under examples, this is where you will find the examples split into different directories. You don't have to do it this way. I just did it like this. So let's say you look at the first NSX cluster, deploying the first cluster. Short overview, but the important thing is the variables file. The first couple of parameters are about your NSX node. When you install NSX, obviously, it needs a username and password. This is where it will go. These variables are the ones which will tell you where the OVA file is. OVA, OVF, it could be a local file system, it could be a HTTP, FTP remote file system, doesn't matter. Because I use OVF tool underneath, you can use the same set of parameters as well. I have then created a bunch of network parameters. Now, I split my variables based on node 1, node 2, node 3, mainly because I'll have 3 NSX nodes per cluster. Some information is common, some is not. So I just split my variables that way. This is just my way of doing it. You don't have to do it this way. It's a variable file. You are free to give whatever variable name you want. Just make sure if you change the variable name, the referencing that happens in the playbook, that has to change. Otherwise, you're just good to go if you change the actual value itself. Then I have information about additional nodes. In the example that's there here, you can see that the port groups, data stores, they're all vCenter module object IDs. It's no longer the case if you look at top of tree today. You can actually give the user-friendly names that come up in vCenter inventory list. So the Ansible modules have been enhanced to go query the vCenter, convert the names into an ID, and then pass it into the API call. This is my compute manager. This is the vCenter that I'll be first using to install the first NSX node, and also the vCenter that I'll be registering NSX nodes, NSX manager with. So pretty straightforward variables file. Configure, this is just a sample playbook, pretty simple. Again, as I said, each task I've made it into a playbook. You can combine all of them together. Now, in terms of actually running this, the video that I was talking about is on NSX Tech Zone. It's a new site. It's been up since a couple of months now. If you go under the networking solutions and under network automation, you will end up on this page. Go to, I think, introduction, automation with SDKs and Ansible and Terraform, and this is the video. It actually goes through step-by-step of modifying the variables file, running it. It takes the entire process for me in my lab takes about 40 minutes to bring a complete cluster up and running. Depending upon your systems, it should be about the same. But the good thing is it's 40 minutes of time where you can, I don't know, go have coffee or have lunch. So it's good. All right, going back to day one operations in terms of configuration. So today, we already have modules to do everything that I'm talking about on this slide. It's in the dev branch. You're free to go play around with it. It's going to be GA'd pretty soon. So you can create your tier 0 gateways, tier 1 gateways. You can create segments. You can create firewall rules. You can create tags to different objects. You can create groups. You can use those groups in these firewall rules. So all of this, playbooks for all of this is already available on the same GitHub page that we saw. I just added the VMs to complete this diagram. The demo that I'm going to show will not create the VMs themselves, mainly because you're just using the vCenter modules to create the VMs. So in this case, the configuration, as I said, is in the dev branch. If you go to the policy and the examples, this is where you'll find all of it. So gateways, segments, groups, security policies, which also has firewall rules. And again, if you look at the variables file, here it's, what I've done is I was thinking about how to make this a bit easier in terms of switching between APIs and Ansible. I kept the format specifically as JSON, because that way I can copy-paste my API request body into my variables file directly. The only change that you might want to do is, in case where you have UUIDs in the API, where it expects a UUID, or it expects like a vCenter mob ID, you can actually give a name in the Ansible variables file. The playbook is smart enough to figure out that it's a name and not an ID. If it is a name, it will talk to vCenter, convert that into an ID. Or if it is an ID on NSX itself, it's smart enough to figure out that and convert it, and then issue the API call. So again, I'm just defining a bunch of segments, tier 0s, tier 1s, groups, saying that, hey, my VMs with specific tags, name it a specific, give it a specific tag to it, give a specific tag to it, sorry. I'm also adding tags to all the objects. I'll show why I'm doing this. This is mainly from a demo and a search perspective. It does not affect functionality, unless, of course, you want to use the tags in your firewall rules. And then comes security policies. Again, as I said, this format is exactly equal to the API call. So if you look at API guide and the variables file, it's a very close match. Just for me, that made my life easier when I was creating these examples, and I would recommend doing that. You're, of course, free to use the regular YAML syntax. It'll work. If you look at the master file, and there's a bunch of other examples that other people have contributed, some of them have it with regular YAML syntax. Up to you. All right. So going to the demo, this is my NSX manager. Let me look at the networking tab. You can see there is one tier 0 already created, which provides my north-south connectivity, no tier 1s, no segments, and no firewall rules, DFW rules as well. So what I'm going to do is, create all of them, create an entire 3-tier topology using Ansible. People in the back, the font is OK? Give me a thumbs up. Yes, thank you. I'm just logging into my Ansible host, my super special alias. I've done a git clone. Obviously, modified my variables file to suit my lab environment. Created a wrapper shell script. Nothing special about it. The only thing is I am making sure my flag is the right flag. So in the variables file, there is a flag called state. State equal to present, meaning the objects are going to be created. And state equal to absent means the objects are going to be deleted when you run that specific playbook. There is no other change you need to do to change between create and delete. Just toggle this flag and everything disappears. The flag is defined globally in my example. You don't have to do it that way. You can define it under specific objects. Just make sure you're referencing it properly in the playbook. So I'm running it. This is standard Ansible log. Of course, you can do a verbose log. If you go look at the Ansible log, it'll show you the API call that's happening in the backend. It will show you the all the API objects that are being passed out, and it's pretty straightforward at this point. So that's it. Everything got created. So now if I go back and do a refresh, you see there are some distributed firewall rules. Of course, this is just dummy in terms of for the demo. You can create whatever you want at this point. Now going back to the tag that I was talking about. The reason why I gave Ansible as a tag to all the objects that I created, not just my VMs, is because I could do this. The moment I do a global search on my tag, I get every object that my Ansible script created. This is a very easy way to differentiate between objects that Ansible creates versus objects that manually somebody created. Or if you have different Ansible scripts interacting with NSX, just tag them differently, and you'll be able to differentiate them. There's all the segments, tier 0s, tier 1s, DFW rules. Now, the policy draft that you see here, the very first time you search on Ansible when there is nothing in the system, you won't see it. This is because since 2.4, there was a new feature that got introduced where every time you publish a DFW rule, it saves the config as automatically as a draft, just so that you could revert it back. In case you didn't know, it's a pretty cool feature. It will actually tell you when that was done, what change happened. It gives you a delta. It's a pretty neat feature. The downside of that is when I do my search, all the previous publishes that I did keeps coming up in my search list. It does disappear. I think it disappears after like 90 days, or it only stores the first 100 drafts. So that's why you see the policy draft objects here. Now, similarly, just like create, I have a cleanup script. All I'm doing is changing the flag back to absent. For the demo, I put it as a shell script because I didn't want to VI or Emacs and then search and replace. This is quicker. And of course, so this cleanup topology, I think the build topology, they're all already on GitHub. It's just, I'm including a bunch of other playbooks in it. This again, you could just have all the tasks in one big playbook to create objects. I found this a bit easier because now if I want to switch between create and delete, obviously the order changes. So you don't have to go in and then modify the order in which the tasks are executed. You can just change the include lines here, and then you can change the order. So I'm just cleaning it up. Again, standard Ansible, go through all the objects, clean it one by one. Should be done anytime now. All right. So if I go back and do the same search again, none of the, apart from the policy draft, all other objects are gone. So obviously, my demo worked. So yay. So that was the quick demo. Let me see if I have anything more. Yes, support. As I said, it's fully supported. You can call GSS. You can contribute back. Anything on the dev branch, even though we say it's best effort support, community support, feel free to reach out to us, raise an issue. And generally, we are very quick in terms of looking at it and then responding to it. The engineers take the bugs and then do quick bug fixes. If it is a feature request, we tag it, and the PM team, we make sure we are tracking that, and then we include it in the next cut of the product. So yeah, what's next? Play around with it. Go to the Ansible repository. There is also a blog post, again, a couple of months old, specifically on the NSX install through Ansible. It goes step by step, along with the video. It's a good text way of learning the same thing. It goes through every specific variable, what it's for, what value you can put there, and then after each step, it kind of gives a screenshot in the system, as in terms of that way you can relate, oh, I did this step, and this is what I see in the UI. So you can kind of correlate that. Just a simple blog post. That's it in terms of resources. NSX Tech Zone or the GitHub page, that's your friend. Generally, in terms of if you want to learn more about NSXT, hands-on labs, what I also get a question about is, we do have certain modules that are obviously supported here, or obviously listed in the GitHub. What if you don't see something there? One way, raise an issue, feature request, but you can also use a URI Ansible module. It'll work. The only thing is, if it uses any IDs, it has to be exactly what the API expects. Otherwise, you have to do like jumping around the hoops in terms of parsing other data, doing a get, getting some data, parsing it, and then passing it to the next URI call. So our modules avoids all that, mainly because it's doing it for you. But you're still free to use the URI module for steps that are missing. Most of it will be coming soon, but if there is something very specific right now, for example, we don't have load balancing support today. If you really want load balancers, feel free to use the URI module. It's just an Ansible module. It'll definitely work. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?